pastor at Bellevue Baptist, and this is
Tobin Shelton, associate pastor at Bellevue Baptist.
And we're going to be talking about the book of Genesis today. But before we do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sermon from yesterday and the things that we mentioned in Revelation chapter 9. So in Revelation chapter 9, we're continuing the trumpets, and these are judgments coming upon those who dwell on the earth, coming against those who do not belong to God's kingdom or trust in the Lamb. And so you have the fifth and sixth trumpet in Revelation chapter 9. And when the fifth trumpet is blown, John sees a star that has fallen to the earth from heaven, and to this star is given the key to the bottomless pit. Now, this star obviously represents an angel. You can look at places such as Job 37, verse 8, to see where angels are referred to as stars, and many other passages in the Old Testament. But this angel is receiving this key to the bottomless pit. And in the Greek, this is quite literally the abyss. This is a place that chaos and evil dwells in. It's also a place that functions as a spiritual prison for those who have been rebellious against the Lord. For example, in the book of Jude talks about angels who left their proper domain, and because they left their proper domain and came to the earth, because this is recalling Genesis chapter 6, and procreated with human women, God has locked them in the abyss in everlasting chains, waiting for the day. And from this pit, from this abyss, comes hordes of locusts. Of course, this reminds us of the plagues of the locusts from the book of Exodus chapter 10. I think I'm going in and out a little bit.
You're not supposed to hear yourself.
Good.
Because it's just, I muted the main sound system.
Now, last time it's happened, it did go in and out a little bit on the last one. But just making sure.
We'll edit this out.
Cut this part out. Resuming. From this abyss comes hordes of locusts. This reminds us of Exodus chapter 10 with the plagues of the locusts that came upon Egypt. And these locusts represent forces of darkness. They represent maybe demons and also rebellious angels. John doesn't specify, but they are demonic hordes of some kind. And they're given the authority to torment those on the earth for 5 months. And of course, who they are tormenting are the very people who swore allegiance to Satan and his kingdom. Isn't that ironic? It's ironic that Satan offers people everything this world has to offer: position, authority, promises of safety, and abundance and life. And yet when it comes down to it, all he can give people is fear, despair, hopelessness, death, and destruction. And so we also see not only the demonic hordes in Revelation chapter 9, but we see destroying angels. The book of Psalms, in Psalm 77 I quoted from this morning, or 78, talks about destroying angels, angels who helped or administrated the plagues that came upon Egypt. And these angels are described as conquering armies, men who sit on horses waiting to charge against the enemy. And it says something interesting at the very end of Revelation chapter 9, and that is, through the tormenting of the demonic hordes and through the judgment of the angels, that people did not repent of their idolatrous actions. And that's interesting because Psalm 115, verse 8 tells us that those who make idols become like them. They do not see, they do not hear, nor do they understand. And it shows us the common thing that we experience in this world. Even though the gospel is preached, even though the good news about Jesus and the kingdom of heaven is proclaimed, there are those who are unwilling to relinquish their own authority and submit themselves to the lordship of Jesus Christ and his kingdom. So that's what we talked about yesterday, Revelation chapter 9. Moving on now, we're going to be talking about the book of Genesis today, particularly Genesis chapter 1. And we're going to be focusing on two words in Genesis chapter 1. Those two words are two Hebrew words, bara, which is normally translated as created, and asah, which is a Hebrew word that means to make. And so Toby is going to start us off and maybe show us a distinction between both of these terms and how they are being used in Genesis chapter 1.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Logan. So when we start looking at scripture that everyone pretty much has memorized, if you're raised in church, it can be a little bit difficult when we try to break down the grammar of the original languages and then try to understand what words mean in their context. And so one of the things that me and Logan say often is it can never mean what it never meant. Right. And so our goal is to do our best to understand what it meant. Mm-hmm. So then we can understand what to do with it now. So for example, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Every word of that sentence is a choice that an interpreter has to make. They have a corpus of Hebrew material and a dictionary of Hebrew material, and they have to say, all right, based upon this context, what do these words mean together? Now, one of the, I think, better arguments is how, because context dictates this, how Genesis 1:1 should actually open, is we already have a piece of land that is without form and void. There's already darkness. There's already the waters. Mm-hmm. And so we're not starting from scratch in Genesis 1 and 2. We're starting with something on the table. And when we think about that, that puts us into, all right, well, if that's the case, well, maybe we need to rethink some of the ways that we've approached this text. So the beginning preposition, even in the beginning, the more prevalent scholarship seems to be pointing to, yes, in the beginning is a viable translation, but so is when beginning. So like the word "the" is not in the Hebrew text. So it would be when God began, and this word create is the word bara, and it's only used when it's used in the sense of creation with Yahweh, with God, the Father. God, here it's Elohim, but it's talking about Yahweh. Mm-hmm. Someone who cares about that may come at me, but I don't think anyone who cares about that will be listening to this. So God barad the skies and the land. That's the literal translation. When beginning, God barad the skies and the land. And that word create, we often translate, has a meaning. And it has a meaning in a certain context. And the reason why we want to harp on this is because we don't think in these categories because we don't think like the ancient person does. When we think of God creating, we typically think of God creating from nothing. Right. Ex nihilo. And that's a Latin phrase, just means from nothing. And that's really a later development. Now, there's plenty, I think, of context to show that God, and Logan can probably show us this, where God creates and makes all these things, the earth and all of that. Right. That's okay, but that does not mean that is the initial purpose or intent of the person who wrote Genesis 1.
We could put it this way. What was his presuppositions when it came to the world? Yeah. His presupposition was God made it.
Yeah, so I mean,
so that was never in question.
That's our presupposition of his presupposition, but I think it's correct.
Yeah. So Moses, in Moses' mind, there's never any doubt who made this world. In fact, the psalmist in Psalm 33 says that God made the heavens and the earth according to the word of his power. So that is the presupposition of Moses in Genesis 1. So Moses is not proving that God made the world, but Moses is communicating through this word, bara, something else.
Right. So that's the thing. Is like we want to try to understand, because there's no ancient Near Eastern creation documents that we have found that talk about being made from nothing. That's okay. That's not really the purpose. They don't think like, how am I going to answer questions about science that people are going to have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years from now? That's not their endeavor. they are writing within their context, within their world. And so when they're thinking about something being created, it's thinking about something that has now been given purpose. So an easy analogy is like let's say someone's going to put in a restaurant in Melbourne and they're going to build it from scratch. Now, when does that restaurant become a restaurant? Is it when the land is purchased, when the foundation is poured, when the building is complete, when the tables are set, or is it when it's open, the kitchen's working, and people eat there for the first time? So that's when its purpose is actually given. Right? We're not talking about the process of making something out of material. We're talking about when something becomes useful. God gives all things purpose.
Right.
And that's what is actually encapsulated in this term. He gives function and purpose. And we can see that demonstrated in Genesis 1. So in verse 2 it says, the land is without form and void, tohu and vohu.
Mm-hmm.
These terms go together to say this place is useless, it's good for nothing, it has no purpose right now. When the land is cleared from the exiles, I believe it's in Jeremiah, he says the land is tohu and vohu. It is void and useless. He uses the same language to say land's not good for anything because there's no one in it to work it.
Right.
There's no one in it to give it purpose. And so we have a God hovering over the face of the deep, the waters, and he is going to take this chaos. In the Greek translation in the Old Testament, it's the word abyss, that Logan said earlier from Revelation 9.
Right.
And he's going to take that chaos and this disorder and this darkness, and he's going to give it purpose. We can see that on the first day. Let there be light. Now, I say this a lot. People's like, I don't think like that. But when you think of light, do you think about what is light? Define it. In our modern scientific mind, if we really thought about it for very long in our science classes we went through, well, light is a wave or a particle.
Right.
And it travels 186,000 miles per second. And that's what light is. But obviously, we have a light here. It's called day. And he calls...
Yeah, the light is given a name.
Yeah, it's called day.
And so is darkness.
And it's called night. Therefore, what is he doing to light and darkness? Day and night. He's giving them purpose and function. He's giving them the purpose of time. So they're going to function as time. And you see that, how important is this for understanding agrarian societies that grow plants and harvest and all of that kind of stuff. But just in general, every one of us operate around a calendar. We operate around day and night. So this is what God is putting and instituting in place. And each day is going to be him either instituting something for purpose and use or making something of which will purpose and use that space. So,
and God, now don't mishear us in saying that God is creating nothing in this chapter, because the word asa, to make, is used, such as in verse 7. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters, so that they were above the expanse, and it was so. Verse 16, it says, and God made the two great lights, right? The greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. But even in the making of things, they're made to be used for a purpose. They have a function which continues this theme throughout Genesis chapter 1.
Yeah, so asa seems to be where God is working with materials to create. And bara, like when he began to create, is the idea of giving purpose or function to that thing. And so your English translations differentiate that with create and make. And one clear example is if you go to verse 20. And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth and across the expanse of the heavens. So God created, or bara, the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves. with which the waters swarm, according to their kinds, every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Now, where is the purpose? It's in the next verse. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. That is the purpose of the created order, is to be fruitful and multiply. And he gives them that job. On a side note, when you see at the end of each day, God saw that it was good. Now, a lot of times in modern interpretation, some folks will translate good as this idea of being perfect. That's not really what the interest is here. When we think of good, think of how you use the word good, and it's pretty much the same. If my car breaks down and I take it to the mechanic and he fixes it, and he says it's good, now, I don't expect him to have replaced every broken part or to fix the scratch paint or the stained seats or whatever you have in your car. But it's working.
Right.
The idea of good is the idea that it's working as it is designed to work. Right. It is not good for man to be alone. So we've got to fix that. We've got to make it good.
Right.
So God makes woman. You have this all throughout. And here, God, we have him in other places making the animals and things like that. But here he is giving them purpose, bara. And
he also gives purpose to human beings in verses 27 and 28.
But in 26 he says, let us make a saw. Let us make man. What does he make man out of in chapter 2? Dust, which is an ancient Near Eastern image for mortality. In our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds in the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God, bara, created man in his own image. In the image of God, he bara'd him, male and female, he bara'd them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, what? The same thing he said to the animals.
Right.
But more, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So we have purpose and function given to man. We are to rule as co-regents or vice-regents of God on earth. And just so you know, the image that is created in these days of creation is the image of the construction of a temple. That's why Isaiah says the heavens is his throne and the earth is his footstool.
Right.
Even the scene with the tree of good and evil and the tree of life, that's a throne scene of God showing up. Ezekiel shows us that the devil figure was a throne guardian in this scene, right, in Genesis 3. So this is a temple. All of creation is God's dwelling place. Temples made by humans are a microcosm of the universe.
Right.
And so here we have the actual universe, expanse, the cosmos, all of it, and it is where God dwells. That's why Solomon says, you can dwell in this temple, but could it even contain you? No, because the only thing that can really contain him is creation itself. And Solomon understood that.
In a real simple way to describe what's going on here in Genesis 1 is my daughter at home has a dollhouse. And it's a wooden dollhouse. It's got 4 compartments in it, and each compartment is a room. And when we first got it, there was nothing in it. You had to take the figurines, make the kitchen, make the bedrooms, and she arranged each room with people in it for a purpose and a function. And that's what God's doing in Genesis 1. It's like a dollhouse. He is arranging things in it. He's putting things where they need to go so it functions properly. And the question we have to ask is, well, what do we see after God arranges the world as he wants it? Well, that comes to chapter 2, right? Genesis chapter 2.
Yeah, it ends the 7 days of creation. Thus the skies and the land, or heavens and the earth, were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day, God finished his work. This is the things he had made, the physical, material things. he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. Now, the two words, you can't see it in the English. Bara is translated as a noun here as creation in the ESV, but it's actually the verb he created. And then the word for make, it's the things he made, is also here. And so we've tried to smooth it out in an English translation, but the idea is that like God made all these things, and he rested from that. And therefore now, because he's given them purpose, and now his job is to rule and reign over those things. Because that's actually what resting means. And while are commanded, in the Old Testament to rest on the Sabbath day, is because it's to recognize that while we don't work, God is always in control.
He's always working.
He's always working.
So him resting is he's taking up his rule and authority and maintaining what he has just ordered.
Yeah, it's like if he just finished building, or if he just finished building like an airplane, and he's going to take off in it now. Okay, the plane's built. Well, now he gets to sit in the seat, and he gets to control it. That's what resting means, and you can demonstrate that throughout the Old Testament. I think Psalm 132.
But this is also another picture of temple.
Yes.
Right? So God has created his temple, and now he has taken up residence within it. And so he has created the earth, he has placed it, and things are functioning the way they should, and now he is taking his presence, he has taken up residence on the earth, and we see that more in chapter 2 in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, chapter 2, that people will say this is like a second creation, which is really, it's a bad reading. This is a continuation, it's a sequel. We know that because Genesis has a formula that says, and this is what happened next. It's the generations of, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth.
Right.
And in this generation, he's going to set apart specific sacred space on the land we call the Garden of Eden, and that space is going to expand. But in the midst, when a God in the ancient world, and when God rests in his temple, before he does it, the last thing they put in the temple is the image.
Right.
So what's he done? Happens on day 6? The image gets put in, right? Humans. We're alive. Oh, the microphone. We're alive. He's a living God. Go just search in the English Bible how many times it says living God.
Right.
How many times? It's a living God, and those who reflect him and are his image bearers are living.
Yes.
And then all other gods, the idols, they're dead. And all of their image bearers are going to become like them, dead.
Right.
Which is also in Revelation 9.
Yeah.
So it all connects, trust me.
Yeah.
Just take my word for it.
In many places, the Bible says he's not the God of the dead, but of the living.
Of the living, yeah. And that's what that means. We serve a living God, not some dead God that can't do anything for us. Maybe he's on vacation, or maybe he's out using the bathroom, like Baal on Mount Carmel. But not our God. Our God is resting.
Right.
Which means he is in control. He is seated in the commander's seat, and he's the one who is wielding power and authority.
Yeah, he's not like the God of Aristotle, who creates all things, makes all things, and then just sits back and lets the earth function on its own, and you cannot know this God. That's a deistic God. It's not a theistic God. This God of the Bible actually interacts with his creation and continues to maintain it and keep order.
Yeah, and that's actually all, that you see all of that happen in the first 3 chapters of Genesis. His intimacy with his people, how much he loves and cares for them, like being in his presence and being obedient and following his commands, or where life is found. And outside of that, everything else is just kind of death.
Yeah.
And that's always been the message of the Bible. Do you want life? Find the one who gives you purpose and meaning.
Yep, that's it.
And that's what Genesis 1:1 says.
Yeah.
He gave purpose and meaning to everything. He didn't just make it. He didn't just form the atoms and molecules and make this up. He gave you direction. He told you that you matter.
Yeah.
and outside of him, you lose all purpose and meaning.
Absolutely. So I think we do a disservice when we use Genesis 1 to debate current modern thought. And that is always evolution versus creationism. I'm not an evolutionist by no means. I don't think that theory is correct, and I wouldn't even describe it as scientific theory. I would consider it more of a philosophical proposition than a scientific theory, but that's another subject. But I don't think that's what Genesis is trying to answer for us. That definitely wasn't in the mind of Moses when he wrote it. But let me give you a little bit. Doesn't mean that we can't use what's in Genesis 1 to defend God's existence. So I'll give you an example. When I want to talk to someone who does not believe in God, I will ask them a question such as, there are many things that you assume in this world that you take for granted, and because it's just that way. One of them is what we call the uniformity of nature, where we can predict the future will be like the past based on past experiences. So if you stump your toe tonight before you go to bed and it hurts, it's probably going to hurt if you stump your toe the next night before you go to bed. We call this the uniformity of nature. That's what allows us to do mathematics. 2 times 2 is always 4. It lets scientists conduct their experiments, because if the experiment is successful, it will be successful no matter how many times they run it. So the future will be like the past. Well, why is that? Well, I believe it's because here in Genesis 1, God has not only created this world, he has given it purpose, functions in a particular way. There will always be summer. There will always be winter. There will always be these things in place because this is an ordered world that God has made.
There will always be gravity.
There will always be gravity.
Some people tried to say gravity was going to get turned off a few days ago. It didn't happen. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was crazy. They're like, NASA had to come out and say, no, listen, gravity's not going to go away.
Well, that's good, because we'd all be floating somewhere.
They would be in trouble.
Oh, anything else?
Listen, if you have questions, just feel free to ask them.
Yeah,
There's
sure.
a lot happening in this passage, and just remember how many years we were separated from it and how difficult it is to synthesize all that information so that it can be understood. And there's so much stuff out there that's way off. So, but we're open for any kind of discussion or conversation around it, for sure.
Yeah, and just remember this way. Sometimes to understand the Old Testament, you have to think like an Israelite. So I can't think as a 21st century modern day person, because the Bible wasn't written then. It was written to an ancient people who had presuppositions that God existed and that this is his world that he has made. And if that's true, then Genesis 1 is not proving that God made the earth. It is showing how God has brought functionality to this world, and he has ordered his creation.
It's just entering right into it. This is what God does. All the other ancient accounts are like, so-and-so God fought this monster, and that monster was used to make all the stuff. Like, that's very much common.
Yeah.
Not
Greek
this
mythology.
God. This God
all
just
of it.
says, let there be light.
Yep. This God is different from all of the gods. It didn't take many gods to create and order this world.
No.
It only took one.
He tamed the whole thing with his voice.
Yeah, with the word.
He didn't have to fight some big monster. He didn't have to prove himself to some other divine council of gods.
Right.
There's no one that compares to him. And in fact, this text is a ridicule, a mockery of all the other gods. It's written kind of like, I don't think so.
And it's also for those who challenge God. When Job finally gets the nerve up, he wants to stand in God's counsel. He wants God to answer to him. And God comes on the scene and says, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know.
Let's talk about it, Job. And Job says, my bad.
That's right. No rival.
So anyway.
Yep.
It's probably pretty good.
Yep. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. Love to hear your thoughts. Until next Monday, we'll see you later.